Welcome to Drinking on the Edge. I'm David Furitos. Joining me from Radio Free Rhinecliff remote is Matthew, who's the founder of RFR. Joining me today are two vintners from a legendary but still extremely active wine region in France. I have with me from Chablis, a name that should be very, very recognizable to any lover or even occasional passerby of wine. I have with me today Estelle Roy of La Chablisienne. Welcome, Estelle.
Thank you.
And joining her and this across the seas recording is Valentin Servin of his family's winery, also in Chablis.
Hello, David. Hello, Estelle. Hello, everyone.
Excellent. You know, we've been very graciously provided some of your wines from your U.S. importers. Thank you to them. And also thank you to the BIVB, the promotional body that's helping to make this possible. So let's get right into it. And we'll be tasting the wine soon enough, but what are Chablis' unique characteristics? That is the Chablis wines, because there's also Chablis, the district is Chablis, geographically, politically. But what are the unique characteristics we can associate with Chablis wines?
I would say minerality, if I can begin with this. High minerality, the feeling of the Estelle.
Chardonnay is one of the most famous variety and white wine around the world, but the terroir of Chablis is unique because we have Kimmeridgian soils, marly limestone with tiny oysters, and which bring to our wines a typical minerality, a freshness, and zesty aromas, and we take care throughout every step of the wine growing and vinification process in order to ensure the real expression of terroir in our wines.
And Chablis comes from a long tradition of making white wines up to the 17th century. And as opposite to the other parts of Burgundy, we have a degraded oceanic climate, whereas Beaune or Champagne are more in continental, which brings more freshness, or what Estelle said about salinity as well, adds to the expression of Chablis and its singularity between Champagne and the rest of Burgundy.
I would concur. I agree with that. And, you know, what I found too, that throughout my career to describe Chablis is even though all the white wines of Burgundy, nearly all of which are based upon the great Chardonnay, are technically dry. However, the impression or the flavor profile, generally speaking, of Chablis tends to make it seem a little bit more dry than its Burgundian neighbors. This has been something that's been integral into my understanding of Chablis. So even though, let's say, it's technically, more or less the same dryness, for, sugar left over, whatever, it seems to be a little bit more precise in its dryness.
Yeah, I think it could be due to either altitude, because I know Chablis is a bit higher up in altitude rather than Beaune. And I don't know about too much about the soils, but I would guess that we have a higher limestone concentration to add more of this dryness that you can feel on the mouth, but still the full complexity of Burgundy wines that supports it.
That's my understanding too, that there's a bit more limestone up in your part of Burgundy around the Yonne area. Would you concur, Estelle? Do you think that's also true?
Yes, of course, and it's our technical of vinification and aging too, because we don't choose a lot of barrels, and when we use it, it's not a new barrel. It's
used or old barrel, yes, previously used barrel, yes.
And we can keep freshness and tension and salinity, and it's a distant mineral quality, and we preserve that in Chablis.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. You don't find the use of new barrels, even in small proportions, until you reach the better Premier Crus or most of the Grand Crus. And even then, it's never a large percentage. Brings to bear the fact that, new barrels can often give the sense of sweetness, whether or not they're types of sugars, sometimes they are, or it's just the impression of it from the vanillins that will impart their way into the wine. That can make that difference as well. So what place does Chablis, as a concept, hold as one of the ancestral homes of the great Chardonnay? Now, there is a village called Chardonnay. That's not in your area. It's farther south and east. But historically, Chablis holds a unique place as one of Chardonnay's ancestral homes. What are your thoughts about this?
Chablis is an ancient and world-renowned wine region, and Chablis was home to monks who cultivated the wine grapes, ensuring the success and development of Chablis wines. And by the mid of 14th century, Chablis has been exported to France, Belgium, and England, and Chablis became a part of Burgundy during the 15th century. So it's a very old vineyard. And historians believe that Chardonnay spread southward to the rest of Burgundy after being planted in Chablis during the 12th century by a Cistercian monk.
Yeah, the Cistercians were integral to the development of quality wine, not only in Burgundy, but by extent, the entire world. We should remember them so fondly.
It is true. And at the time, the transportation of wine was mainly done through the Canot Bourgogne, so by fluvial boats. And what really helped Chablis in this case was the high acidity that we had in the wines, because preservation techniques were not as good as we have today. And high acidity means that it could get transported very easily and not lose as many qualities that it had. So over the years, it became known as a wine easier to transport to other countries, and it really helped shine the name of Chablis around the world.
Excellent. Yeah, and even to this day, I know Belgium is an important market for all Burgundy wines, Chablis included, of course. And if I can just drop in, I know that one of the great wine festivals, one of the great annual wine festivals in the entire world takes place in May in Chablis. It's an homage to Saint Vincent, Vinny de Saint. And I encourage people to come visit for this fantastic festival to celebrate Chablis wines and the culture of your area. So in this, can you share, please, how are Chablis wines enjoyed and embraced in your native area? What's the wine culture? Every area's got its own unique culture. What's Chablis pace that's kind of unique to it, and as well part of the greater Bourgogne area?
I think Chablis wines are still very much enjoyed within the region. It used to be a very winemaker-oriented region rather than the whole appellation. So even though commercially it was easy for it to go abroad, the local population still very much enjoys Chablis and its consumption, because pretty much everything turns around winemaking. And yeah, the Fair de Saint-Vincent, which is celebrated mostly in January.
It's January. Excuse me. I thought it was May. I apologize.
No, the official date is, I just checked, and it's the 7th of August. But we celebrate it in January because I think that's around the time the first cuvée is out.
I stand corrected.
No problem. And yeah, I think Estelle can elaborate on that.
Yes, and Chablis is very famous to this exceptional subsoil, and which contributes to the unique taste of different wines. And tasting the wines of this appellation allows to understand the meaning of minerality and the style of Chablis adapts to the younger palates, and it's easy to understand the different terroir and Chablis.
So as we could proceed here, as I mentioned, I have some wines. I want to give a quick shout out to your colleagues at Simonet Lefebvre. I was given a bottle of one of their wines, but excuse me, I saw some fantastic enjoyment earlier this week, so they're not here to talk for themselves. I want to thank them for that bottle of wine. It was a lovely Petit Chablis. And speaking of which, I'm going to begin now tasting your wines that have been provided. Estelle, I have here your Chablis La Serene 2019. So it's got a couple of years of development on it. And then I have here, Valentin, your 2022 Petit Chablis. And as I pour and taste them for myself, and I'll maybe say a little bit about that, maybe not, you can, of course, do the same. But what differences are there between the expressions of your Chardonnay wines and those of your neighboring Burgundian and appellation neighbors? That's Estelle, you're going to answer first.
It's always the same characteristic, because They're unique with the virality and the freshness. And we don't run your water last is the cuvée with a style and profile with fresh nose, white flower aroma, and we have a big freshness in the mouth with salinity and all plants. Correct? No. And we
For that. But would you say there's a difference between Chablis wines? And if you're making a quick comparison, someone wants to know the difference between a Meursault and a Chablis, or a Bon Village expression of Chardonnay, how would you say their wine, generally speaking, might differ from that of your wines of La Chablisienne? So, Valentin, do you think there's any difference between Chablis' expression of Chardonnay with your neighbors in other parts of Burgundy, Meursault, Montrachet, any of the Beaune villages? What do you think?
I believe there are. I know there's a bit of bickering between the Beaune region and Chablis for the usage of Chardonnay, and mostly the usage of barrel, because Chablis is mostly known for its high acidity, minerality, and that usually sustains with inox tanks. So we're pretty precautious with the use of barrels, mostly that's what we were talking about with not using aged oak, because we don't want to imprint too much on the wine, rather than appellations like Meursault, who does full-on barrel vinification and have much rounder wines with buttery tastes. We're trying to keep it more like the backbone of Chablis, with acidity, minerality, and that limestone or silex feel you feel when you drink a glass. So I wouldn't go as far to say that we have finer wines than the rest of Burgundy, but it's a bit the elegant side more than expression.
Yes, I would tend to agree. Yeah, and that comes in individual expressions, but also comes into historical narratives. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. They've been doing what they do a long time. So there's always a general cultural tendency to go with what you're most comfortable with, and what you're most comfortable with is what your predecessors have done. Okay. So tasting your wines here at Begs and Estelle, your La Serene, lovely, shall we say, starter level Chablis. Great wine for everyday consumption. Very light, delicate, dry, clear expression of Chardonnay. Thank you for this. And the 3-4 years of aging. Excuse me, what year is we now? We're 2024. Oh my gosh, 5 years of aging. This wine has not suffered at all. It's 5-year-old, just everyday Chablis. Great value, great wine to consider. Just because it's a basic Chablis is nothing to be ill-considered. Lovely wine. Thank you for this. Glad to drink it. Now, but stepping up, you have what I know is the relatively new appellation, relatively in the historical context. You have a new appellation of Petit Chablis. So you have a small Chablis? Even people who speak French very poorly, like myself, understand that Petit is small. So, Valentin, the next one is Petit Chablis from your family estate. If you and Estelle can kind of just quickly summarize what is Petit Chablis versus Chablis.
Sure, if Estelle would like to start.
The difference between Petit Chablis and Chablis is the soil, because Chablis is on the Portland summer and very oak, short, and in conclusion, Chablis is on the Kimmeridgian soil, so it's the Jurassic soil in 150 million years ago. So in reality, because here, so we did previously, but we have fossils with the tiny oyster in the Kimmeridgian soil, and for the Portlandian soil, it's very chalky. So we have Chablis is very fresh, very fruity, expensive, and it's very light and pleasant and digestible. Okay, yes.
Yeah, I would say Valentin's expression, and it's much younger one, 2022, but it's had a little time to rest, shall we say, has a bit of a surprisingly amount of complexity. I didn't expect. I thought it would be kind of a bit more soft and subdued, like yours from 2019. But this is a little bit more, yes, it's more fresh because of the younger age, but it's got a bit more complexity going on. Perhaps it's because it has less time to have softened like yours. Interesting comparison. It's not a corresponding comparison, but it's a great way to start my day. I know you're 6 hours ahead of me, but it's a great way to have my morning here in the Hudson Valley. Well, thank you for lovely tastes of these wines. So, inasmuch as Chablis is, historically and perfectly linked as one of the greatest expressions of a wine's cool climate characteristics, it's worth asking, how is the impact of climate change, something that is, you don't have a historical perspective like I do because I'm double your ages, but in terms of what you have to do day to day in growing and vinifying, how has this impacted you?
It's more on variability throughout the years. We've had a few climatic episodes in, I think the latest years were 2016, 2021, and 2024, this harvest. And the climatic episode like hail or frost tend to be more frequent and more violent, so we must adapt accordingly. And for the vinification process, the rising temperatures mean higher degrees of alcohol, which might mean that we need to harvest grapes sooner in the future rather than we do now, and not have the same maturity in grapes. So it's going to be some tough challenges to crack, but very interesting in terms of production.
Excuse me, the current harvest, the 2024 one, has been reported to be exceedingly difficult. How's it been for you, Estelle? You've probably been working crazy, huh? You must have been struggled a lot this year. It's been well reported that the current harvest has been one of the most difficult in memory. How have you coped with it?
This year was very good one because we had a frost and a hailstorm and a lot of rain during all year. So it was very, very complicated to apply a whole treatment to conserve integrity of grapes, and the disease, the suppression of disease was very strong. And so it was complicated. And after, for the maturity, it was long because we had no sun and a lot of rain. So the date of the harvest was later this year. We started the 20th of September.
Oh, that is quite late.
Yes. So, but we are optimistic because the quality of the jerseys are good. And we have a lot of freshness and great acidity. So I think it was a typical Chablis like in 21 or with the previous year. So for the moment, it is good.
Okay. And individually or collectively, are there any recent scientific developments you care to mention that have been applied to contribute to the betterment of Chablis wines or your individual companies?
I feel like Estelle should be more acquainted with the recent scientific studies than I am. So I'll let her respond.
Technology or recent?
Either shared knowledge or technology, anything that might be interesting for the professional to hear about. That's all.
Okay, for the vineyard, it's not my part, so I think it's new techniques that in the winery, it's a little different because we invest in new material like palm or so. But this year, I tried a new technology with floating automatic, which continuously raises the density and the temperature of all tanks. And it's very practical because we save time on our manual records and anticipated remotely languishing fermentation. And we can plan our operation more and quickly. Yes.
So it helps with the quality of the wine. It helps with the quality of your budgets, I presume, as well in the long term. Yeah, that's great. You and your U.S. importers of Domaine Estates and Weigenmetzler, as I mentioned, providing me with bottles of your Vion wines. And what makes the Vion vineyard unique? It's one of the larger Premier Cru vineyards, and that Premier Cru is a step up from those wines of Chablis or Petit Chablis. So what makes this particular site unique and warrant the higher costs that the consumer must pay of the Vaillon wines and other Premier Cru wines. So why is it worth it?
So I don't know if you know how the Chablis and Premier Cru appellations were decided. There are, I think there's more.
17 years.
But yeah, I think it was post World War II when they decided to work on the appellations. And at that time, it was decided that the Chablis has a lot of hills around the village. And it was decided that the north side of the hills were to be regular Chablis because they would receive less sun. And in cold climates, it would mean a bit of loss of quality and maturity. And the southern part of the hills were Premier Cru because they would receive sun in the morning and throughout the day up to late in the afternoon. So
makes simple sense. That's good.
And are of course exposed on the south part of the hill, but back to the sun, so they would receive it a bit later, but on the hotter hours of the day. And Vaillon gets the sun pretty early in the morning and almost throughout the entire course. And it creates a very typical Chablis, but with the complexity that Premier Cru brings, with Pierre à Fusil would be, with hints of flintstone, silex again, a bit more mature wine, very good for aging.
What is
The difference between Chablis and Premier Cru and Grand Cru is soil, because they are the better soil with better exposition and slopes, and the maturity is higher than Chablis or Petit Chablis, and so the grapes are more concentrated with different aromas. And of course, we don't vinify the same way for the Premier Cru and Grand Cru in the Chablis or Petit Chablis, because for our Chablis and Petit Chablis we use stainless steel tank, and for our Premier Cru and Grand Cru the aging is also longer, and we are on the lees, which bring length and volume, and the aging is longer, and we use some oaks barrels, so it's like that. The difference.
What size of barrels do you use in the Chablisienne cellar? Is it regular Bourgogne barrels, like 225 liters or higher?
We have original barrels in 228 liters, but we use a lot of 400 liter.
I need to come visit the cellar because it's been a very long time I haven't been to the Chablisienne.
Of course.
So the listener can have an idea of the relative size. Can you quickly just say what's your size of your company, your individual companies are like, Estelle and Valentin?
You can start.
So our winery is 38 hectares, and for a regular production around 2,500 hectoliters per year, which rounds up to 300,000 bottles, if my math is correct.
And for us, we are a unique cooperative in Chablis. We produce on 1,200 hectares with 200 wine growers, and the specificity of La Chablisienne is that the wine growers press grapes into their estates, and we collect the musts, and we find them, and we sell them. So, and we produce 80,000 hectoliters per year, and we produce between 7 and 8 million of bottles.
So, excuse me, that'd probably be 800,000 hectoliters, not 80,000, just to be clear. Is it?
No, 80,000.
So, looking at it's from a historical perspective, it must be very interesting working for and challenging, Estelle, working for a cooperative. And in past times, cooperatives were both seen with both positive and negative attributions, but times have changed. What's it like now? And I know if you can quickly summarize, working with 200 growers, all of whom that you've trusted to create good expressions. And of course, you work with each one of them, or your colleagues do, to ensure that each batch that arrives meets the standards that the cooperative agrees upon collectively and at the administrative level individually. So that must be very complicated and challenging to maintain such a high standard of quality, which is definitely showing in your wines. Thank you again. And La Chablisienne, when did it begin? What was the year that this cooperative came to be? Or maybe it's an amalgamation of multiple cooperatives. It must be a great story in there. But if you could just quickly let us know what it is.
The story of La Chablisienne.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a long story.
Oh, maybe better for another time. But it's good to see in current times, because I've been in the wine business long enough to see when cooperative wines were not given the respect, and sometimes for good reason. But things have changed, and I have to say La Chablisienne is certainly one of the best cooperatively expressed wines in the world these days. It's not my first time tasting your wines, so I can give you that compliment with 100% assurance for the consumer. Valentin, your family's been making wines since when?
It has been making for far less long than the Chablisienne, at least professionally. I know my father used to do a lot of genealogy and came back to the 1700s, and there were a lot of barrel makers that usually lived on farms and had a little bit of vineyard to help. But the production started in the late 1900s, I think, after the Second World War, when things began looking up for the vineyard in France. So I would say around 1950.
Good. So you have some generations behind you helping you today.
Yeah.
Okay. So
definitely.
Well, as we've already mentioned, any wine bearing the appellation of Chablis must and does contain 100% Chardonnay. The area grows other varieties. I don't mean, again, we're not talking about appellation Chablis wines, but the area in general grows other varieties. What might these be?
Sorry, I don't know the question.
There are other grape varieties being grown in the general area. I don't say Chablis appellation, it's a different wine. But what other grape varieties might exist besides, the 100% Chardonnay wines that are clearly Chablis?
Yes, we have also a regional appellation with different grape variety. We have Bourgogne Ligoté, of course, from the commune of Sierdan one and on the Chalky soils. We have also Saint-Brie, which is Sauvignon Blanc. And we have also red wine with Bourgogne Pinot, and it's only Pinot Noir.
It's good to have those backup wines. Chablis becomes, as we say, too much, that you have expressions of other white varieties in Aligoté, which is not grown much of anywhere else in the world. You find small amounts elsewhere, but not much. Sauvignon Blanc, which is grown in many, many places in France, but also throughout the world to great success. And then Pinot Noir, which is done in villages in your area too, as it is throughout Burgundy and, of course, throughout the world. So it's nice you have some variety to keep yourself amused and maybe perhaps provide some insights to what you're doing specifically for Chablis. So while neither La Chablisienne or the Servin family wines were named in this particular report, a recent story in the French magazine, 60 Million Consumers, it cited Chablis amongst other French wine regions as possessing higher levels of certain chemical residues that are, commonly accepted in the EU, but also some that are banned. So what are your perspectives as to the use of these chemicals, of any chemicals, applied in your vineyards, especially with vintages like 2024, like we just discussed, that provide a lot of mold pressures? And how can the consumer here in the United States and elsewhere, we do have an international audience, small, but we have one. How can the consumer rely upon your winery's transparency and the region's transparency in assuring that the wine they drink is pure and safe?
Well, it has a lot to do with communication. Well, if you're not part of a label like organic label, or it's mostly through communication. I know I know that historically Burgundy has been a heavy user of chemicals during and after the Industrial Revolution, but the tendency seems to go towards a more reserved use of chemicals, especially in the last few years. I think the BIVV provided us with some data about this, and it has been reduced for more than 30% in Chablis. Europe is also banning a lot of CMR, which are lowering even the frequency of this appearing in the wine. I'm mostly confident in maybe not for years like 2024, where the risk is very high and the organic label is pretty difficult to obtain. It takes 3 years. So winemakers should try and find a middle ground between what is good for the environment, which is less chemical and less systemic products, and still having to manage a comfortable harvest to last through the years.
Yes, it's nice to see that in recent years there's been a greater conscientiousness throughout Europe, but specifically in Burgundy, to gradually reduce the use of chemical applications in the vineyard. And it's not been unnoticed. Your partners at the BIVB made it clear to me that, just in these last few years, since 2019, the use of herbicide treatments has dropped by 36% in the entire region. You were just alluding to that, Valentin.
And the thing I find difficult, but I think this is probably going to change in the not so distant future, but the way we grow our wine, which is very high density, maybe opening up this density to lower it a bit and give us a bit more space between the
grapes and the vines and everything, which will certainly help diminish the need for the use of fungicides, which can we can be trapped in that circumstances. Yeah, Estelle, what are your perspectives on this, please?
Yes, it's the same. Like for this year, it was complicated because the weather was very bad, and we tried to reduce treatment and so on. But sometimes we needed to preserve the harvest, and we need to continue the production. So it's a difficult choice, but yes.
It's always a struggle. I've worked in vineyards myself in Germany, so I understand about cool climate wine growing. No, you have somebody who is sympathetic, but I also remember challenging my friend decades ago in the Saar region about his use of I always mispronounce it. Thank you, glyphosate. I've been mispronouncing it since I first discovered the chemical, and his use of it early on. We're talking about the early 2000s, and he didn't think it was important to be concerned. And I said, we don't know enough. You always have to be concerned. You can't take things at blind from the chemical companies. They will always try to inform to the betterment of their profit, not always to your success. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but you have to take greater care. And it's good to know that the EU is really leading the way in this. And France, of course, as the most important agricultural country in the EU, is firmly with these initiatives as well. So coming back to something a bit more inspirational, how do you individually express your craft through your work?
I will still speak for herself because she has been crowned a very distinctive title not so long ago.
Yes, the mean where we need vinification is a magical moment of the transformation of grapes into wines. So crucial steps which allow us to magnify the product of our wine growers. To carry to 4 years. And Chablis is very interesting because we can bring out the entire aromatic palette of Chardonnay through the different terroir, wine that respect the product to achieve balance and only in the wine. And for me, it's very important to combine respect for traditions with the constant search for improved quality. So it's my philosophy of winemaking.
Valentin, do you have you a perspective you want to share? Or
I am a bit less experienced than Estelle in terms of winemaking, but for me as well, it's always the best part of the year is during vinification. I want to try a few new things in the cellar. I'm always open to suggestions. That's why I'm currently doing a harvest in southern France to see how they are working. I would also like to try indigenous yeast at the winery to try and work on this and reduce the amount of products we pour into wine. I try to do my best to preserve the grapes we grow and transform it into the wine you are tasting today.
I hope you do pursue the use of indigenous yeasts. I know that from a technical perspective, they're sometimes a little bit more complicated, a bit tricky to use indigenous yeasts, but I know there's a long and growing interest in wines that are made with it. And for a long time, decades, I have argued that indigenous yeasts are part of the expression of terroir. So, okay, lastly, if you can please share why you think the enthusiastic wine tourist, from the US or from Brazil or anywhere in the world, why should they come to Chablis? What separates Chablis from other wonderful Burgundian destinations?
Chablis is unique, of course, because yes, I repeat, but the terroir is very unique, and the exceptional subsoil contributes to the famous different wines. And this appellation allows to understand the dry Chardonnay with minerality, purity, and tensions. So I think it's perfect to discover the different climate and terroir, and of course we are also competitive to compare the other white wines from Bourgogne. So I think it's a good place to visit and enjoy wine of Chablis.
Thank you, Estelle. Valentin?
So first, of course, to come and taste the uniqueness that makes Chablis wine so special. Also, if they are lucky, to taste some old vintages at some wineries place that keeps them. And I would also encourage tourists to come visit the region around Chablis with the lesser known appellations, like Estelle mentioned Saint-Brie. There's also Épineuil or Irancy that are also making wonderful wines and that are a bit lesser known than Chablis. But
That's a great recommendations.
I would just to say that we would welcome everyone equally, and please come visit us.
Naturally. I would also argue, too, that you've got the village surrounded by the beautiful hills of the Prame and Grand Cru vineyards to look at. People can take walks up or bicycle up in the good weather and look at the village down below as they look through the vines. It's nice walking. Additionally, we have the St. Vincent Festival in August, I guess we determined it would be, to come and join for that. And yeah, I think there's lots to offer people to see what your wines are about. Most specifically, going back to the Vion wines, both of your expressions are terrific. I enjoyed tasting them both. I look forward to enjoying them, swallowing them throughout the weekend. I'm sure they will last beautifully the next few days. I encourage people to seek them out. They're both available in the U.S., throughout the U.S. And for just to get a sense of it, again, we're not giving specific prices. The Petit and the Chablis wine, Petit Chablis and the Chablis wines are about $20 a bottle, give or take a couple of dollars. And the Vion wines are about $40 a bottle. Again, a couple dollars, give or take from that. And the differences are clear, but all the wines are great. Your time has been very generous. Thank you for joining Drinking on the Edge, Valentin Servin and Estelle Roy.
With pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.